Welcome to this fall protection video training. During this training, you will learn the fall protection requirements each contractor must follow in regard to the recent OSHA law changes while working on construction-related job sites. It is important that you understand the content before moving to the next topic. Feel free to pause the DVD and review it as many times as needed. As a reminder, it is your responsibility to know the construction laws that govern the area in which you work, as they may slightly differ from what is presented here. Before you start, we encourage you to have a copy of the following resources in front of you so that you can review them as we go through the training. A copy of each is provided for you on the resource CD. Consider taking a moment to pause the DVD while you gather a copy of each. Upon completion, provide each person a copy of the fall protection quiz and be sure to use the documentation form to record the training. It is important that you document each training session you have in the event of an accident or OSHA inspection. The quiz and documentation form are also provided on the resource CD. Let's get started. Upon completion of this training, you will be able to describe the nature of the fall hazards in the work area, understand the correct procedures for fall protection systems, understand the use and operation of fall protection systems, describe the requirements for employee rescue, and demonstrate the techniques for inspecting fall protection equipment. It is important that each employee be capable of understanding each point mentioned above and how your company's fall protection program addresses each issue. Fall protection violations continue to be the leader in job site accidents, deaths, and OSHA fines. In 2014, there were more than 8,200 violations directly related to fall protection within the construction industry. On average, OSHA fines are $2,300 with penalties up to $70,000. The good news is that OSHA's enforcement is saving lives. In 2013, there were 294 fatalities reported for workplace-related falls compared to 809 in 2006. But that still represents nearly 300 families who lost a loved one while working hard to provide for their family. Job site deaths can be prevented. Fall protection training must take place by a competent person who is qualified in the given areas. An OSHA competent person is defined as one who is capable of identifying existing and predictable hazards in the surroundings or working conditions which are unsanitary, hazardous, or dangerous to employees, and who has authorization to take prompt corrective measures to eliminate them. Make sure your employees know who the competent person is on the job site and how to reach him should a safety issue arise. The fall protection training you provide your employees must enable each employee to recognize the hazards of falling, train each employee on the procedures to minimize these hazards. Frequently reviewing your fall protection program and training material helps ensure that your crew know the hazards and how to prevent accidents. Certificates of completion and other training materials are available on the resource CD. The establishment of a proper fall protection system is critical to providing employee safety. The evaluation and planning should occur before employees set foot on the job site to perform work. It is the responsibility of the employer to perform an assessment of the hazards and provide a plan for protecting workers from falls. Some situations may require an engineer to design anchor points and deal with other considerations. Once fall protection systems have been installed, all workers must be trained and know how to use the fall protection equipment that is in place. OSHA requires that fall protection be in place on construction job sites when working at heights 6 feet or more above a lower level. If you are in the general industry, you must comply with the same rules when working at heights of 4 feet or more. Some regions require fall protection at heights lower than 6 feet, so be sure to check with your governing board. When working around dangerous equipment that an employee can fall into, fall protection should be provided even if the height is lower than 6 feet. If your employee is unable to identify the hazards, it is important that your competent person point them out and ensure that your employee is properly protected. Fall arrest systems are great, but there are other options that should be considered first. Can the hazard be eliminated by working on the ground? If not, should fall restraint systems such as positional lanyards or guardrails be used? With careful planning, many fall hazards can be eliminated with engineering changes or completing work on the ground. Working at heights provides its own dangers. Other dangers that are easier to eliminate include keeping the work area free from debris and clutter. Doing so will reduce trip hazards and dangers from falling objects and help prevent falls. Doing the job right the first time not only saves time, but it could save a life. Too many accidents occur when employees are working too fast. While working from heights, use lanyards to raise and lower tools to prevent them from being dropped on others below. It is important that your employees know how to communicate warnings with one another. Safety keywords can prevent accidents by providing valuable time to get out of the way of danger. Take a moment to pause the video and discuss with your employees safety keywords that they already use and other work practices that make a difference. Fall protection systems are not just for those working at heights greater than 6 feet. It is also for those below. Several options include using screens, panels, or guardrails, using canopies to catch falling objects, storing material at least 6 feet from the edge, using lanyards to raise and lower objects. Wearing a hard hat is always a must when overhead danger is around. In 2014, an employee was killed after a worker's measuring tape was knocked off his tool belt several stories up and struck an employee in the head. We suggest that your company identify additional things that can be done to prevent objects from falling based on your job site setup. The employer is responsible for making sure each employee is trained. The employer must also identify the qualified person at your company or on the job site. You must also identify who the competent person or persons is on each job site. This is typically a supervisor. Authorized users are those who have been trained on the use and inspection of fall protection. Due to the associated dangers, fall protection systems must be designed and installed by a qualified person. Warning line systems help keep your workers away from a hazardous edge. These can be constructed of ropes, wires, or chains and have a minimum strength of 500 pounds. They must be flagged every 6 feet and erected at least 6 feet from the fall hazard. The warning line system must be 34 to 49 inches above the work surface and must be sturdy and not top over easily. Employees should be taught to stay away from warning lines. In certain situations, no other form of fall protection is feasible. In this case, safety monitoring may be used as a last resort. Should a safety monitor notice a problem, workers must immediately comply with the monitor's instructions. A safety monitor is also responsible for ensuring that workers keep the area clear of anything that may cause falls, such as grease, oil, tripping, or dropping hazards. Like the safety monitoring system, controlled access zones should only be used when other means of fall protection do not eliminate the hazard for employees. Consult the OSHA regulation for further information on when controlled access zones are permissible. When safety nets are used, they must be installed less than 30 feet below workers and must be installed under the working or walking surface. Before a safety net can be used for fall protection, it must be tested by dropping a 400-pound bag of sand from the highest level and employees expected to be working above the net. Safety nets must be inspected once a week, and objects that fall into the net must be immediately removed. The maximum size of square opening in the net cannot exceed 6 inches across. Guardrails are the most common and usually safest way of dealing with fall hazards. The top of the guardrail must be between 39 to 45 inches above the walking or working surface, and there must be a mid-rail between the top and working surface. If screens are used instead of mid-rails, the screens must extend the top rail to the working surface. Top rails must be able to withstand a force of 200 pounds, while toe boards must be able to withstand a force of 50 pounds while 3.5 inches tall. A personal fall arrest system consists of 4 important components: harness, connectors, anchorage, and rescue plan. The system must allow no more than 6 feet of free fall. It must also have a maximum arresting force of 1,800 pounds and no more than 3.5 feet of deceleration distance and be designed to withstand at least twice the expected impact force. Harnesses are a popular option as they can be used for fall arrest, fall prevention, and suspension. Body belts are not considered a harness and cannot be used for fall arrest. The harness must be the proper size for the employee and in good condition. Once you have on the safety harness, perform a safety check. This safety check should take place each time the harness is used. If there is an issue or concern with your harness, you should bring it to the attention of the competent person on your job site. It is always a good idea to review the manufacturer's owner's manual for safety checks that may be specific to your harness type. Calculating the required clearance is important to ensuring the proper operation of the safety system. A personal fall arrest system must ensure that the user does not contact a lower level in the event of a fall. As shown in the diagram, this can require nearly 20 feet of clearance. As an example, George is anchored 2 feet above his head with a 6-foot lanyard. What is his required clearance in the event of a fall? George would need 15.5 feet of clearance to avoid striking a lower level in a fall. The anchor point that is selected has a lot to do with required clearance. The anchor point should always be at chest level or above. A 6-foot lanyard that is anchored at foot level would result in an 11-foot free fall and exceed the 6-foot limit. It is important to understand how anchor points will affect their required clearance. Load-bearing parts of connectors must be rated to 5,000 pounds and must be double-acting and self-locking. Connectors must be compatible with the equipment being used. New ANSI standards require the gate and the gate sides to be rated to 3,600 pounds, up from 220 pounds. Old connectors are likely to not meet the new standard. Be sure to check. Do not use connectors that are not intended for fall arrest. It is common for hoisting equipment and rigging carabiners to get mixed in with fall arrest gear. These have different purposes and cannot be used interchangeably. Deceleration devices help reduce the sudden stop when falling. A 220-pound man falling 6 feet will generate over 5,000 pounds of force on the body. Deceleration devices are required to reduce that to less than 1,800 pounds. These devices cannot add more than 3.5 feet to fall distance. It is important to note that some devices, such as self-retracting lifelines, have deceleration devices that are internal to the equipment. Employees should also know how to tell if a shock absorber has been used. Lanyards are used to connect the harness to the lifeline or anchor point. You should never tie knots in lanyards or use them over sharp corners or edges, as this will weaken the lanyard. Lanyards are an important part of determining your fall distance. Use shorter lanyards if fall distance would exceed 6 feet, and be sure to inspect lanyards prior to every use. Most of the time, the shock-absorbing part of a fall arrest system is on the lanyard. You should avoid having lanyards on site without shock absorbers, because they can be easily confused and used for fall arrest. Lanyards without shock absorbers should only be used for positioning. A lifeline is used to connect a person to an anchorage that cannot be reached with their lanyard. Lifelines must be able to withstand 5,000 pounds of force and be tense enough to not add significant distance to the fall. They must be designed, installed, and supervised by a qualified person. Anchors must be able to hold 5,000 pounds per person attached, which is about the weight of a pickup truck. Anchor points may only be used for fall arrest, and they should be located directly above the user to minimize swing fall, as this can cause employees to strike objects near them in a fall. This should be avoided by ensuring that the anchor point is directly above the worker. Electrical wiring, piping, and other support systems are not good anchor points. It is important for employees to consider how their selected anchor points will affect their free fall distance. OSHA regulations do allow companies to engineer their own anchor points, provided they meet the OSHA requirements. Personal fall arrest systems must be inspected before every use and must be inspected routinely by a competent person other than the user. If there is any sign the equipment has been impact loaded, remove it from service immediately. Inspections are important. Equipment in poor condition does not protect employees. You should always inspect hardware for cracks, deformity, corrosion, and ensure metal parts can move freely. Hardware that is out of round can indicate it has been impact loaded and should be replaced. Inspect webbing for fraying, cuts, and abrasion. UV damage is common and will weaken the webbing. Harnesses should be free of oil, paint, and other chemicals, which can degrade the webbing. It is suggested that you do not write directly on harness webbing. Names should be written on the label. Some inks cause materials to weaken. Manufacturers have different requirements for broken stitching. Be sure to consult your equipment manual. Labeling on fall protection equipment must be legible, and your employees must understand how to read the labels. If it is not legible, it must be removed from service, regardless of the condition of the equipment. Rescue plans are an important part of building a safe job site. Ensure that every job site has a rescue plan specific to that location. The employer shall provide for prompt rescue of employees in the event of a fall, or shall assure that the employees are able to rescue themselves. If the employer relies on emergency services, they must ensure that they can arrive quickly and that they are trained and have the equipment to perform rescue. A sample rescue plan is included in the forms folder of the resource CD. Always check with emergency services before deciding to rely on them for rescue. In order to rely on emergency services for rescue, you should ensure that they can reach the location of the worker in a timely manner of 15 minutes or less. They must also be on duty the entire time work is being performed and must have the equipment and training required to reach the worker. There should be a backup in the event another emergency is occurring. Emergency services must understand the hazards of suspension trauma. If the company relies on employees to perform rescue, they should designate an experienced, competent rescuer who is an individual designated by the employer who, by training, knowledge, and experience, is capable of the implementation, supervision, and monitoring of the employer's fall protection rescue program. The competent rescuer should designate authorized rescuers and provide the needed rescue equipment and procedures training. Although a harness was used and operated as intended, there is still a danger that requires immediate action. Suspension trauma is caused when blood collects in the legs as a result of prolonged suspension. Suspension trauma can cause unconsciousness and even death. Symptoms include faintness, nausea, dizziness, graying or loss of vision, unconsciousness. If you are experiencing these symptoms after being suspended, please seek professional attention. There are several ways to prevent suspension trauma. Options including frequently pump and move the legs to prevent blood pooling. While suspended, try to push off nearby objects to reduce weight in the harness. Some harnesses with suspension straps allow standing in the harness. The reflow syndrome can be fatal when collected blood in the legs suddenly rushes back into the body. To minimize this, do not allow a person suspected of suspension trauma to lie horizontal. Instead, place them in a seated position on the ground with legs in front of them. When a fall does occur, Follow the 4 steps below immediately. Activate your company rescue plan. Evaluate employee for injuries and, if necessary, call 911. Report the incident using your company's incident report process. Investigate the cause of the fall and adjust your fall protection system to prevent a future occurrence. When a fall occurs, the company needs to make every effort to improve their system and make sure it does not happen again. Getting into the habit of recording near misses will help identify situations that need attention prior to an actual accident taking place. In summary, fall protection is required when workers are 6 feet or greater above a lower level, where there is danger of falling into hazardous equipment, when other situations as called for by OSHA and the company fall protection plan. A fall arrest system consists of a harness, connectors, anchorage, and a rescue plan. Employers must provide prompt rescue for employees or ensure that employees are capable to rescue themselves. Fall arrest equipment should be inspected before every use and routinely by a competent person other than the user. This concludes the DVD portion of the fall protection training. At this time, take a few minutes to discuss any questions or concerns regarding what you just learned. Once ready, use the quizzes located on the resource CD. Wallet cards are also available that can be easily carried on the job site. Consider making a copy of your fall protection plan and rescue plan for each of your employees and have them read through it and sign off that they understand its contents. As a reminder, it is important that you document this training in the event of an accident or OSHA inspection. Certificates and documentation logs are available on the training materials folder of the Fall Protection Resource CD. Additional copies of the forms and DVD can be ordered on www.fallprotectionprogram.com.